So, you know when you walk into a massive big box store and look at the sheer volume of products sitting on the shelves? Or when you think about those giant factories churning out goods 24/7, have you ever wondered what happens if we just make too much? Like, what if we produce way more than people can actually buy, and it triggers some massive economic crash? It's a pretty common modern anxiety. But what if I told you that according to one of the absolute most foundational ideas in classical economics, a general overproduction of goods is actually completely impossible?
Welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to dissect an idea that literally dominated classical macroeconomic thought for over a century. It's called Say's Law of Markets. We're going to look at the anatomy of this really fascinating economic principle, understand how it theoretically bulletproofs an entire economy against overproduction, and then explore the incredibly strict set of rules required to make the whole thing actually work.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll cover the core of Say's law. Second, the classical economy assumptions. Third, barter versus monetary systems. And fourth, the savings loophole.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the core of Say's law.
If you ever end up taking a macroeconomics class, this concept is basically the bumper sticker you'll have to memorize. Say's law asserts that supply creates its own demand. Now, what does that actually mean? It sounds kind of like a riddle, right? Well, it means that the very act of producing a good, supplying it to the market, automatically generates the exact amount of income needed to buy that good. There's just no such thing as producing something into a void where nobody has the money to purchase it.
The law actually gets its name from the French economist J.B. Say, who famously stated, "It is production which creates market for goods." And the logic here is beautifully simple when you break it down. According to Say, a person only goes through the immense effort of producing a commodity for two possible reasons. Either they want to consume it themselves, or they want to exchange it for other commodities. So your supply of a good is the exact same thing as your demand for someone else's good.
Let's think about how this builds in the real world. Say you manufacture a motor car. You can't do it alone, obviously. You have to pay rent for your factory, wages to your workers, interest on your business loans, and, take a profit for your own effort. The total sum of all those payouts is exactly equal to the final value of the car. You haven't just created a product, you've created a pool of purchasing power in the economy that perfectly matches its price. Boom. Supply has literally created its own demand.
Moving right along to Section 2, the classical economy assumptions. Now you might be thinking, if it's really that simple, why do we ever have recessions or giant warehouses full of unsold inventory? Well, Say's law doesn't just magically work in any environment. It requires a very specific, demanding ecosystem. First, the law assumes a perfectly competitive economy. Second, and this is absolutely crucial, it assumes perfectly flexible prices. If demand for a product drops, prices must instantly fall to meet it. If there's unemployment, wages have to instantly drop until it becomes profitable to hire everyone back. Basically zero friction. It also assumes unlimited opportunities for labor and capital, meaning you can easily shift workers and money to wherever they're needed. And it relies on a large, ever-expanding market.
But the assumptions go even deeper into the systemic rules. Classical economists viewed money merely as a veil. Its only function is to facilitate the exchange of physical goods. The money itself has no independent effect on economic activities. Because of this, they assumed no hoarding, meaning people spend all the money they get immediately. They also assumed the state is entirely neutral, so zero government interference with free market forces. And finally, Say's law takes a long-term view. Short-term overproduction might occasionally happen, sure, but in the long run, these natural forces will always self-adjust to restore full employment.
All right, Section 3, barter versus monetary systems. Let's see how this theory holds up when we change the way we trade. In a simple barter economy, Say's law is pretty undeniable. If I bring 10 bushels of wheat to the market to trade for shoes, my act of supplying wheat is literally my act of demanding shoes. Every seller is necessarily a buyer. The sale and the purchase are the exact same event. But we don't live in a barter economy. We live in a monetary economy. Does the law still hold up when we use cash? Classical economists argued absolutely yes, because, again, they viewed money purely as a medium of exchange. It's really just a tool to make the barter easier.
The renowned economist David Ricardo hit the nail on the head here, noting, "No man produces but with a view to consume or sell. Production is always bought by production and services." In Ricardo's view, even when money is involved, you're only holding on to that money temporarily. Ultimately, you produce something so that you could eventually consume something else.
Think of this entire concept as a continuous giant loop. Let's say an economy produces goods and services worth 100 crore rupees. As we established earlier, that production instantly generates an income worth 100 crore in the form of wages, rent, interest, and profit. And because classical economics assumes no one hoards money, that 100 crores of income immediately becomes demand for goods and services worth 100 crore. That money lands right back in the hands of the producers, allowing them to fund further production of 100 crore for the next year. It's a perfect, uninterrupted circular flow, keeping the whole system in a permanent state of balance.
Which brings us to Section 4, the savings loophole.
Now, I know exactly what you're thinking right now. Human beings aren't robots. We don't instantly spend every single cent we earn. So what happens in real life when people simply don't spend all their money? What if they take a chunk of that 100 core income and stuff it under a mattress or stick it in a bank? Well, if people save, then aggregate demand falls short of aggregate supply. The loop is broken. Goods sit unsold on shelves, and that general overproduction we talked about at the very beginning becomes a terrifying reality. So, how did classical economists solve this?
The answer lies back in those assumptions we discussed earlier, specifically perfectly flexible prices. In this case, the price of money is the interest rate. Classical economists argue that if savings rise, the interest rate will automatically fall. This cheaper borrowing cost encourages businesses to take out loans for investments, like, buying new machinery or building new factories. So the interest rate seamlessly shifts in such a way that every single dollar saved is perfectly converted into a dollar invested. Therefore, aggregate demand, which is consumption plus investment, always remains equal to aggregate supply.
As Alfred Marshall brilliantly remarked, a man spends one part of his income on consumption, and the other part that he saves is actually still spent by him. It's just channeled through the banking system to buy the services of labor and capital for business investment. The money is never truly sitting idle. Thus, even under a modern monetary economy with savings, the classical view holds totally firm. Aggregate supply will always equal aggregate demand.
So, Say's law relies on this beautifully intricate clockwork of flexible wages, prices, and interest rates, all turning together to ensure the economy never actually halts. But there is one final lingering thread here. We've assumed throughout all of this that money is merely a veil, a totally neutral medium of exchange just passing endlessly from hand to hand. But if money is just a tool, what actually determines how much that tool is worth? What sets the purchasing power of the currency itself?
Well, that requires a completely different mechanism, one known as the quantity theory of money. It's actually the oldest theory of how the value of money is determined, first propounded way back in 1566 by Jean Bodin. But how exactly the sheer quantity of money circulating in an economy dictates its value, and whether that money is truly just a veil after all, is a massive topic. And it's one we're absolutely going to have to unpack in our next explainer.